The morning sun filtered through the grand windows of the Crescent City courthouse, washing the marble floors with a golden glow that suggested justice and integrity lived within these walls, though today, neither would be found here easily. Isaac Carter walked through those heavy double doors with a quiet confidence that came from decades of service, from the weight of a badge that most would never know he carried. He adjusted his suit jacket, dark navy with a subtle sheen, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders. To any stranger he looked like a businessman, maybe a lawyer, or even a professor, someone respectable, someone accomplished. But to those who only saw the color of his skin, he was none of those things. As he approached the security checkpoint, a guard squinted at him suspiciously. The guard didn't even ask for the ID yet. Instead, he stepped in front of Isaac, blocking his path. Racist act gives security guard instantly assumes Isaac is a threat because he is. Black and demands he remove more belongings than required. Isaac calmly placed his keys and phone in the tray, watching as the guard waved the next two white men through without even asking them to stop. Isaac didn't react, didn't show any frustration. He had long ago learned how to control the fire inside him. If he ever responded the way people provoked him to, his life would have been far more complicated. After finally passing through, he took a deep breath and continued down the hall toward courtroom 7B. His polished shoes clicked steadily, echoing through the corridor like a reminder. He belonged here. He was here for a very specific reason, just not the reason anyone believed. When Isaac entered the courtroom, heads turned. Some stared too long, others whispered, eyes narrowing as if automatically questioning why someone like him would walk confidently toward the front rows. Racist act gives white spectators in the courtroom assume he must be the defendant or in trouble because he is black. Isaac ignored them. He had a job to do, an undercover job, and today was the climax of a 2-year investigation that could expose a network of corruption woven deep into the city's legal system. At the center of it all, Judge Eleanor Whitford. She took the bench with a practiced poise, chin lifted high, her platinum hair sculpted perfectly as though each strand obeyed her authority. Her eyes swept the room like a spotlight that judged before the law did. The moment she spotted Isaac, her features tightened. There was no curiosity, only assumption, only bias. Racist act gives judge instantly presumes Isaac is the accused and looks disappointed when she sees no handcuffs. Isaac kept his expression neutral, but in his mind, check, confirmation of what the investigation was already built on. Judge Whitford banged her gavel and announced the docket number. This case concerns the alleged property damage committed outside the Whitford estate last Sunday evening. She stressed Whitford estate like her name was a sacred badge no commoner, especially not a black man, should dare insult. Then she finally addressed Isaac directly, her voice dripping with superiority. Mr. Carter, is it? Stand when spoken to. Isaac stood smoothly, hands loosely at his sides, posture calm but strong. I understand there seems to be a misunderstanding, he began. The judge's lips curled smugly before he could say more. We'll see about that, she dismissed him, already forming her own verdict. Racist act gives judge repeatedly interrupts Isaac and refuses to let him speak fully purely based on racial prejudice. The prosecutor, a young man who clearly idolized Judge Whitford, smirked as he flipped through his papers. Your Honor, the defendant was seen near the estate by neighbors. Given the area and the property value involved, it's clear he had no legitimate reason to be there. Isaac raised an eyebrow slightly. He didn't even need to speak. Their racism spoke for them. Racist act gives prosecutor implies a black man couldn't possibly belong in a wealthy neighborhood. The gallery murmured in agreement, fueled by stereotypes stronger than facts. Whitford nodded, not questioning anything. Exactly. Isaac tried again. I think if you allow me a moment, I can clarify. The judge cut him off with a sharp tap of the gavel. The only clarification we need is why you were lurking where you did not belong. The word belong hung in the air like poison. She didn't even hide it. Racist act gives judge explicitly suggests black people do not belong in wealthy areas. Isaac's calm expression remained in place, but inside, He felt every moment of injustice pressing on him like iron shackles. He could have ended this charade instantly. He could have flashed his badge, not just any badge, the badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He could have announced his real identity, Director Isaac Carter, the man overseeing the very corruption case that Judge Whitford was unknowingly sinking herself deeper into. But he didn't, not yet. He wanted to give her every possible opportunity to do the right thing. Every chance to show fairness. Every moment to prove she was judged by law, not by prejudice. And she failed every single one. This hearing was beginning not as a search for truth, but a performance of racial bias. And the show had only just begun. As the air in courtroom 7B thickened with prejudice, Isaac subtly scanned the room. Years of undercover work had trained him to observe everything: the placement of cameras, the twitch in a suspect's jaw, the hidden fear behind nervous eyes. Today, what he saw instead was ignorance wearing suits and jewelry. Judge Whitford whispered something to the clerk, and both glanced at Isaac with a shared expression, the kind that tried to shrink a man's worth down to the shade of his skin. Racist act gives court staff treat Isaac as inferior and share mocking looks because he is black. Isaac could almost predict their next move before it happened. The prosecutor rose again, walking with the arrogance of someone who never expected to be questioned. "Your Honor, we have testimony from 2 neighbors who observed the defendant," he announced proudly, as if presenting irrefutable evidence. He motioned toward a well-dressed woman in her late 50s sitting in the front row. She carried a designer handbag, pearls glinting under the lights, wealth wrapped in judgment. "Mrs. Cartwright, please take the stand." She strutted forward with the confidence of someone who believed her words, carried the weight of the world simply because of the color of her skin and the circle she moved in. She eyed Isaac with visible disgust, lifting her chin so high one would think the air around him carried disease. Racist act gives witness displays open disgust simply because Isaac is black. When she raised her right hand to swear the oath, Isaac noticed how she subtly wiped her palm afterward on her skirt, as though the very act of swearing justice in the presence of a black man contaminated her. Racist act gives she physically signals that Isaac's presence is unclean. "I was returning home Sunday evening," she began dramatically, "when I saw him." Her finger shot out like a spear toward Isaac. He was skulking around the Whitford property. It was terrifying. Isaac almost laughed. He had been taking a quiet evening walk while reviewing case notes. But to her, his presence alone was a crime. "Did he appear dangerous?" the prosecutor asked, feeding her narrative. Mrs. Cartwright's eyes widened. "Of course. He looked like he didn't belong there at all." There it was again, that word, belong. Racist act gives witness implies black. People inherently do not belong in high-class neighborhoods. Judge Whitford nodded, agreeing like prejudice was a rule she had memorized long ago. Isaac clasped his hands behind his back, letting her continue digging her own grave. "Did he speak to you?" "No," she replied indignantly. "I wasn't about to let someone like him come closer." Racist act gives she avoids interaction solely due to race and assumes criminal intent. The gallery reacted with murmurs of validation, as though her baseless fear proved guilt. Isaac's attorney, a public defender who had been assigned to him last minute, finally stood up. She looked nervous, glancing at Isaac apologetically. "Your Honor," she said, voice small compared to the booming accusations, "my client hasn't been proven to be anywhere near vandalism or property damage." "There's no photo, no video, no evidence," Judge Whitford cut her off, annoyed. "This neighborhood is secure. People who don't belong get noticed." Racist act gives judge reinforces segregationist idea that black people do not belong in safe or wealthy communities. Isaac felt his jaw tighten. He inhaled slowly, counting down the seconds in his mind, staying collected. Losing control was exactly what they wanted, but authority wasn't something he needed to show. He already had it, more than any of them could imagine. Still, it stabbed at him, not for his sake, but because millions of others didn't have the badge or the power he had hidden in his pocket. Next, the second witness, a man with sunburned skin and a gut hanging over his belt, took the stand. He looked Isaac up and down like one might examine livestock at an auction. "Saw him near the bush?" he grunted. When I tried to call out, he ran. Isaac didn't run. The man was confused or lying. Probably both. The prosecutor puffed up, satisfied. Clearly suspicious behavior. The man shrugged, adding, "These types don't come around unless they're looking to cause trouble." Racist act gives witness uses racist generalization, these types assuming criminality based on race. The judge didn't object. She didn't even blink. Her silence screamed complicity. Isaac's public defender attempted one more push for logic. "Your Honor, being in a neighborhood isn't a crime?" Judge Whitford leaned forward sharply. "But scaring decent residents is." Racist act gives judge labels white residents as decent and Isaac as inherently threatening. The prosecutor grinned like a predator smelling victory. Isaac finally spoke, voice controlled but firm. "I believe if we look beyond assumptions," Judge Whitford slammed the gavel again. "Enough. I won't allow you to manipulate this courtroom with excuses." Racist act gives judge denies Isaac the right to defend himself because she believes black voices are inherently deceptive. The courtroom atmosphere grew darker, thicker, like hate itself had weight. Isaac lifted his eyes to hers. For the first time that morning, a flicker of fear crossed Judge Whitford's face, not because she recognized him, but because he didn't look scared. He looked powerful. And power, especially when held by a black man, was the one thing this courtroom feared more than the truth. Justice wasn't just blind here. It was deliberately looking away. Isaac remained standing, his hands loosely clasped in front of him, and his calm demeanor irritated Judge Whitford more than any protest ever could. She expected fear from him. She expected trembling, pleading, apology, anything that confirmed the racist assumptions stitched into her worldview. Instead, he stared back with quiet strength, and it rattled her authority. Racist act gives judge is threatened by Isaac's confidence because she believes a black man should appear inferior and submissive in her courtroom. She cleared her throat sharply, trying to reassert dominance. "Mr. Carter," she said with a forced, false politeness, "if you continue disrupting proceedings, I will hold you in contempt." Isaac hadn't disrupted anything unless existing silently was now a crime. But in this room? Maybe it was. The prosecutor strutted back to his table, flipping through files even though he clearly had no more evidence. He just wanted to look busy, to act like this mockery of a hearing had substance. Isaac's public defender leaned toward him and whispered, "I know this is unfair, but please let me keep trying." She looked like a rookie thrown into a fire she was never prepared for. Isaac appreciated her sincerity, and the fear in her eyes made something in his chest tighten. How many lawyers like her fought a broken system every single day? But today was different. Today, the system was being judged, and it didn't even know yet. "Before we continue," the prosecutor said, smirking, "I'd like to address his motive." He took a step forward, pointing directly at Isaac. "Men like him don't vandalize for fun. They do it because they envy success they don't have. Racist act gives prosecutor assumes black people are jealous of white success and lack achievement, reinforcing racist stereotypes." Gasps rippled through the gallery, followed by nods of agreement. Isaac's jaw clenched once again, not for himself, but for every young black man who had ever heard that lie and been punished by it. Mrs. Cartwright chimed in again from the gallery, voice shrill. "He probably wanted to steal something from the estate." Racist act gives assumption that black men are thieves by default. Judge Whitford gestured approvingly. "Yes, that is likely," she said, stamping the accusation as fact. Isaac took a slow breath, controlling the urge to expose every lie in the room. He could end this charade in one sentence, but exposing them too soon would let them escape accountability with the excuse of ignorance. No, he needed them to show their final form, so when he revealed who he truly was, the world would see exactly what justice here really looked like. "Your Honor," Isaac's attorney said, trying again, "this case has no facts, only assumptions rooted in prejudice." "Prejudice?" Whitford snapped, outraged. "I treat everyone the same." Racist act gives judge denies obvious racism while actively discriminating, a common gaslighting tactic. The gallery applauded her, cheering for the illusion she sold them. Isaac wondered if hypocrisy was listed as a legal requirement in this courthouse. Judge Whitford glared at Isaac with venom. You people are always twisting everything into racism. Racist Act gives judge uses the phrase, you people, minimizing and stereotyping black identity as a monolithic problem. Isaac tilted his head, staring at her long enough for the silence to speak louder than any words he could give. She hated that. She looked away quickly, masking insecurity beneath a wall of arrogance. Isaac raised one hand slowly. Your Honor, with respect. Respect. She laughed bitterly. Respect is earned. And I don't see anything respectable about you standing here lying to my face. Racist Act gives denying that a black man can possess respect or integrity. The prosecutor chimed in with mock sympathy. He probably doesn't even have a job. Racist Act gives assuming black unemployment and irresponsibility as fact. Isaac almost smiled at that one. If only they knew. He watched Judge Whitford shuffle a stack of papers on her desk, extra papers, ones he recognized immediately. These weren't part of the case file. They were her personal notes. Part of the corruption investigation. The same papers the FBI had been tracking for months. She thought she was safe. She thought the system protected her. She thought power belonged only to her kind. Her arrogance was about to be her downfall. Out of the corner of his eye, Isaac noticed two courtroom officers whispering together, glancing his way. Racist Act gives officers assume violence is imminent only because Isaac is black. They position themselves closer, gripping their batons, ready to pounce on the slightest sign of noncompliance. Isaac kept his breathing steady. He wasn't afraid of violence. He had faced worse. But the truth was, he didn't want the day to end in chaos. He wanted it to end in justice. Judge Whitford leaned back, fingers steepled under her chin. Mr. Carter, I'm convinced this case is simple. You were somewhere you shouldn't have been. You intimidated residents. And you damaged the property of a respected citizen. She paused dramatically, letting the audience soak in her power. Therefore, I am leaning toward maximum sentencing. Gasps echoed. Isaac's attorney stood so fast her chair scraped loudly. Your Honor, he has not even been found guilty. There's been no evidence, no trial. Evidence? Whitford smirked cruelly. Sometimes the truth doesn't need evidence. Racist Act gives judge dismisses due process when the accused is black, implying guilt is automatic. The prosecutor nodded eagerly. Isaac took a single step forward. Is that how justice works here, Your Honor? Proof replaced by prejudice? The judge banged her gavel, furious. Sit down, she screamed, as if his voice was a threat to her crown. Racist Act gives judge reacts aggressively to a black man challenging injustice, equating his assertiveness with danger. Then she leaned in, eyes sharp and filled with hatred. She spoke a sentence that stripped the courtroom of every illusion of fairness left. Men like you only end up in two places, prison or the streets. Racist Act gives. Judge declares it is the destiny of black men to be criminals or disposable, embodying systemic racism openly. Isaac didn't flinch. He looked into her eyes and smiled, not out of humor, but as a warning. Because there was a third place a black man could stand, in power. And she was about to learn that lesson the hard way. A hush fell over the courtroom, but it wasn't silence. It was tension coiled so tight that the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Isaac slowly straightened his posture. Any ordinary man in his situation might have broken down by now, caught between false accusations, racist humiliation, and a judge determined to ruin his life. But Isaac Carter was no ordinary man. His quiet composure wasn't surrender. It was the steadiness of someone who understood real power. Judge Whitford, however, mistook it for defiance, the kind she believed only came from people like him. Racist Act gives judge interprets a black man's confidence as defiance requiring punishment. She narrowed her eyes. Bailiff, she commanded, prepare the holding cell. I want him detained until sentencing. Her voice was icy and triumphant, as if she had single-handedly protected society from a great danger. Racist Act gives judge takes pleasure in incarcerating a black man despite lack of evidence, seeing his imprisonment as natural order. Isaac's attorney jumped up again, visibly shaking. Your Honor, you cannot throw a man in jail without trial or verdict. Her voice cracked under the strain of fighting a losing battle, but she fought anyway. The judge rolled her eyes. This court has seen enough to know what he is. Racist act gives judge labels Isaac as a criminal based solely on his race, treating it as self-evident truth. The gallery murmured in agreement, prejudice spreading like wildfire. Someone whispered, probably has a record. Racist act gives audience assumes criminal history based solely on Isaac's race. Another voice piped up, look at him, he's guilty. Racist act gives presumption of guilt based on appearance and skin color. Isaac didn't turn toward the comments. He had heard them his whole life. What mattered now was exposing the system that empowered them. He glanced toward the clock above the judge's head to 9:42 a.m. right on schedule. Judge Whitford continued her grand performance, basking in the applause of racist approval. People like him, she declared, are the reason our neighborhoods are unsafe. Racist act gives judge claims black presence is a threat to public safety regardless of actions. Isaac finally spoke again, voice steady and serious. Your Honor, I would like to note for the record that you have repeatedly ignored due process and replaced legal standard with prejudice. She slammed her gavel so hard that cracks appeared in the wooden block beneath it. Enough, she yelled. I will not be lectured by a criminal. Racist act gives judge equates black identity with criminal identity, denying legitimacy of speech. The courtroom officers approached Isaac aggressively, gripping his arms like he was already a convict. Racist act gives excessive use of force assumed. Necessary simply because he is black. Isaac didn't resist. His plan was unfolding exactly as intended. But before they dragged him away, Isaac turned slightly, giving the judge a final, calm warning, you're making a grave mistake. Judge Whitford smirked. The only mistake was letting you walk free in the first place. Racist act gives suggests black freedom is itself a mistake. As the officers led him to the side door, Isaac's attorney scrambled to keep up. Mr. Carter, I'm so sorry. We will appeal. We will... Isaac shook his head softly. Don't worry. Everything is under control? She stared at him, confused by his confidence. Who talks like that while being marched toward a cell? The holding corridor was dim and narrow, cold, metallic walls lined with desperation from past victims of the same broken system. The officers shoved him forward unnecessarily hard. Racist act gives officers intimidate Isaac through violence, assuming black men must be handled brutally. Isaac steadied himself and calmly looked at each of them in the eyes, and that simple act made them uneasy. They expected fear, not fearlessness. One officer scoffed. Bet you thought you were smart coming into her neighborhood, huh? Racist act gives officers frame white neighborhoods as forbidden territory to black people. Isaac replied evenly, I go wherever justice needs to be served. They laughed, dismissing the idea that a black man could serve justice. Back in the courtroom, Judge Whitford was reviewing her notes with self-satisfaction. To her, this case was closed literally and symbolically. She leaned back in her chair, thinking she had proved something today. That she had power. That she had protected her world from corruption. That she had crushed another problem. But corruption wasn't running away. It was sitting right on her bench in designer heels. She had no idea that the entire procedure, every racist word, every biased ruling, every illegal decision was being watched. Because Isaac had not walked into this courthouse alone, one of the cameras in the courtroom, a small device installed just days ago, had a tiny red light blinking in the corner. The city thought it was a standard security upgrade. The judge barely noticed it. But that camera wasn't connected to the courthouse system. It was connected directly to the FBI, and in a room just a few miles away, special agents were sitting in front of a live feed recording every second. On the main monitor, Judge Whitford's face filled the screen. She was arrogant. She was racist. She was now evidence. The lead agent lifted his radio. Director Carter is in custody. Phase 2 approved? A voice crackled through, a cool, commanding voice. Proceed. Judge Whitford thought she was closing a case. In reality, She had just activated Operation Whitford and put herself on trial. Isaac was led into a small holding cell, a temporary cage, cold and narrow, designed to break spirits before trials even began. The metal door clanged shut behind him, echoing sharply like the system's signature sound. But Isaac remained steady, a mountain in a storm. He rested his hands calmly on his knees, evaluating everything, timing, positions, responses. His plan was unfolding with perfect precision. Meanwhile, Judge Whitford sat proudly on her throne, completely unaware that she was the one trapped. Racist act gives judge believes imprisoning a black man is a victory for order. Reinforcing the view that black freedom is a threat, the courtroom hadn't yet dismissed. Whitford wanted to savor her perceived triumph. She adjusted her glasses and looked toward Mrs. Cartwright and the other witness, giving them a satisfied nod. They returned smug smiles, the kind of smiles that had powered centuries of injustice. One of the guards commented quietly, but loud enough for the gallery to hear. Another thug taken off the streets. Racist act gives guard uses a racist slur signaling that black men are inherently criminals. The prosecutor approached the bench, whispering something about ensuring maximum charges. Whitford waved him off. "Don't worry, I won't let him slither away." Racist act gives dehumanizing language portraying a black man as animal, IC. At the FBI surveillance office. The atmosphere was the complete opposite, intense, sharp focus dominating the air. Agents scrambled between screens, documenting every unconstitutional word from Judge Whitford. A senior agent, Ramirez, leaned forward, fingers steepled under his chin. "She's not even trying to hide it," he muttered. Another agent replied, "That's the problem. She thinks she doesn't have to." They both turned when Director Carter's voice came through the speaker again. Calm, commanding, unshaken even behind bars. "Maintain visual. Do not intervene until I say." The agents shared a look, trust mixed with respect. Their director wasn't just investigating corruption. He was dismantling it from within. Back in the courthouse's hallway, Isaac's young attorney wiped tears from her cheeks. She leaned against the wall, frustrated and furious. "How can she do this?" she whispered. A senior public defender walked by and sighed. "Been like this for years. You learn to pick battles that can be won." Racist act gives systemic discouragement of fighting racism because it is considered futile, enabling discrimination to continue unchallenged. "Not today," the young lawyer muttered. Isaac's strength had somehow transferred into her. She straightened her shoulders, determination ignited in her eyes. She would not let this case become another silent injustice. She marched to the clerk's desk. "I want a transcript request filed immediately." The clerk scoffed. "Don't waste your time." Racist act gives clerk dismisses legal rights when the defendant is black. She ignored him and kept writing. Meanwhile, Judge Whitford rose from her seat, robe swaying like a dark omen. She exited through her private door, heels clicking in self-assured rhythms. The prosecutor followed, seeking praise. "You handled him perfectly," he flattered. Whitford smirked. "Men like him are predictable." Racist act gives judge stereotypes black men as all the same, easy to control and destined for punishment. As the judge walked through the corridor, two court officers stood straighter, eager to impress her. She didn't acknowledge them. Entitlement blinded her to anything outside her own ego. The prosecutor asked timidly, "Do you think he has a record?" Whitford dismissed the question. "They always do." Racist act gives assumes criminal history based solely on race, treating stereotype as fact. Inside the holding cell, Isaac remained motionless, eyes on the surveillance camera above the doorway. He gave a subtle nod. That was the signal. Operation Whitford was entering its next phase. Downstairs in the courthouse lobby, 2 FBI agents, disguised as maintenance staff, rolled in a cart filled with equipment upgrades. In reality, it contained encrypted tech connected to the surveillance hub. They passed through security, the same guards who had harassed Isaac earlier, without issue. The guards were too busy gossiping about putting that guy where he belonged. Racist act gives guards celebrate the incarceration of a black man as a victory for their world. Upstairs again, Judge Whitford entered her chambers, closing the door behind her. She hung her robe neatly, replacing it with a designer blazer, her armor for press interviews where she played the role of justice embodied. She poured herself tea, humming, completely oblivious. She didn't notice that the small camera above her bookshelf, previously just decoration, now had a faint green light glowing. She sat at the desk and opened a drawer, revealing stacks of envelopes filled with cash, bribes, the very thing Isaac's case had been targeting. She counted bills casually, as though corruption was nothing more than paperwork. She dialed a number on her office phone. "It's done," she said confidently. "He'll be in jail next hour." A pause. "Yes, one less problem." Racist act refers to black individuals as societal problems that must be removed. She leaned back, sipping tea, feeling untouchable, that arrogance. Isaac was counting on it. In the cell he finally spoke to the officer nearby. "Tell the judge I need a moment before transport. It concerns her case." The officer sneered. "You don't get to need anything." Racist act gives denial of basic communication rights because he is black. Isaac leaned forward slightly. "Trust me." She wanted to hear it. The officer hesitated. Something in Isaac's voice resonated. It wasn't fear. It wasn't desperation. It was command. Moments later, the officer knocked on Whitford's chamber door. "Judge, he says it's important." Whitford rolled her eyes. "Of course he does." But curiosity or insecurity got the better of her. She stood, smoothed her blazer, and strode toward the door. She thought she was walking toward a victory lap. She was actually walking into a trap she built with her own prejudice, and Isaac was preparing to show her exactly who she just tried to put in handcuffs. Isaac slowly reached into his pocket, carefully, so officers didn't overreact. The officers tensed anyway, hands gripping their weapons harder. Racist act gives reflex assumption that a black man reaching into a pocket means danger or weapon. He pulled out a slim, black leather badge holder. Whitford's breath caught. Isaac opened it with 2 fingers, revealing the golden eagle emblem and the embossed words, "United States Federal Bureau of Investigation Director." For a moment, silence ruled the earth. The judge stumbled back a step. The power in the room had shifted so violently it stunned her. Her world, crafted on superiority, shattered. Isaac's eyes never left hers. "You just tried to send the FBI director to jail," he said evenly. Panic rippled through her expression, the first authentic emotion she had shown all day. The officers stared at the badge, their grips loosening instantly. One of them swallowed hard and said quietly, "Sir?" in a tone filled with newfound respect and fear, 2 things Whitford had denied him for the entire hearing. Whitford shook her head rapidly, refusing to accept reality. No, this can't be you, the director? That's impossible." "That position is for someone," she caught herself, but Isaac finished her thought aloud. "Someone not black?" Whitford said nothing. She didn't have to. Her silence confessed everything she believed. Racist act judge implies a black man is incapable of holding high authority or intelligence. Isaac stepped closer, voice dropping to a calm but lethal tone. "You don't get to decide where we belong. You don't get to determine our future. And you certainly don't get to break the law because of your prejudice." The judge's legs wobbled. She reached for the wall to stabilize herself. The same walls that once supported her arrogance now betrayed her. "You have humiliated innocent people for years," Isaac continued. "You have silenced voices, destroyed families, and used justice as your personal weapon. That ends today." Whitford gasped for air, fear tightening her throat. "You can't prove anything," she whispered. Isaac nodded. "Actually, we just did." He tapped the side of his watch, transmitting directly to the FBI surveillance team. Through the speaker, Agent Ramirez's voice responded, "Director Carter, we have full documentation. All recordings secure." The judge staggered, face drained, every racist act, every corrupted decision, captured forever. Isaac looked at the officers. "Remove her from the bench." She is under arrest. The officers hesitated only a second, then obeyed. They stepped toward Judge Whitford, the same way they had once stepped toward Isaac. Except now, Justice was walking in the correct direction. Whitford backed away, voice trembling. "You can't do this to me. I'm the judge." Isaac responded, calm and final. "No, you were the judge. Now, you're the defendant." The moment Isaac stepped back into the courtroom flanked by the officers, the room twisted in confusion. Just minutes earlier, Judge Whitford had stormed out with venom in her voice. Now she returned looking shaken, wide-eyed, and suddenly very small in the space she once ruled like a queen. The spectators murmured, trying to understand what had changed. Isaac walked tall, confidence radiating from his steady stride. The predator had become prey. As soon as Whitford resumed her seat, or rather clung to it, she slammed the gavel down in desperate hysteria. "Court is adjourned," she yelled. But her voice no longer carried the authority she believed it did. The officers beside her did not stop Isaac. They stood ready for his orders. The prosecutor stared, baffled at why the security detail no longer served the judge. Whitford pointed at Isaac, her voice cracking. "Someone remove him." Now, Racist Act gives commands. Removal of a black authority figure purely because she refuses to accept his legitimacy. Nobody moved. Instead, Agent Ramirez entered, displaying credentials for all to see. He approached the bench like a doctor confronting a corrupt surgeon. "Judge Whitford," he said clearly, "you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, bribery, and multiple counts of racial discrimination in judicial rulings." Gasps erupted like a wave through the gallery. Whitford shook her head violently, denial coursing through her veins. "I have done nothing wrong." "You're taking the word of a—" She choked on the next phrase. Isaac raised a hand, stopping her before she exposed more hatred. "A black man?" He finished calmly. Her silence was confession enough. Racist Act gives implies black men are inherently liars and inferior to white authority. The prosecutor stammered, "Wait, Director Carter? Director Carter, the FBI director?" His voice climbed into disbelief. It was as though someone had told him gravity no longer worked. Isaac simply nodded. "Yes, and this case was never about me being a criminal. It was about her." He pointed at the judge, the once untouchable tyrant. Cameras suddenly ignited. Reporters in the gallery already rushing to capture history as it unfolded. Every flash revealed Whitford's terror more clearly. Her hands tray. "This is outrageous," she screamed. "I have the right to defend myself." Isaac replied politely, "Yes, and you will, in a fair courtroom, something you have denied countless people. Racist Act gives she systematically denied fair trials to defendants based on race." The officers moved in to secure her. The instant their hands touched her shoulders, she snapped, "Don't you dare touch me!" Racist Act gives assumes white woman's personal space is sacred while violently invading black bodies with no hesitation. But the law didn't care for her entitlement anymore. As they escorted her down the aisle, she hissed through clenched teeth, "This courthouse was built for justice, not for people like him." Racist Act gives claims legal institutions are meant only for white individuals, excluding black people from justice entirely. "No," Isaac said loudly, ensuring the entire courtroom heard him. "This courthouse was built for truth, and truth doesn't care what color someone is." The gallery applauded, hesitant at first, then roaring. A few individuals even stood, tears slipping down their cheeks. People who had lost family members to her corrupt rulings, people whose lives she had destroyed, felt their souls breathe again. Whitford was dragged toward the exit, still ranting, "I am the law." "I decide," Isaac's reply cut like steel. "You decided hatred. Justice decided your fate." When she disappeared through the doorway, silence replaced fury. Everyone looked to Isaac, waiting not in judgment but in admiration. He stepped up to the elevated bench, the symbol of power she had abused, and placed a hand upon the polished wood. It was a gesture of reclaiming something sacred. "I need to speak to all of you," he began. No one protested. Even the prosecutor seemed humbled into silence. He continued, Today you saw how racism attempts to disguise itself as law. How prejudice hides behind robes and degrees, pretending to be superior. He scanned the room, eyes meeting strangers who suddenly felt seen. For years, Judge Whitford used her position to target black citizens, assuming they were guilty before they spoke. That ends now. Racist Act summary gives her entire judicial career was built on racial profiling, biased sentencing, and stripping black defendants of constitutional rights. A woman in the back rows, an older black mother clutching a photo of her son. He had once stood before Whitford, sentenced unfairly for a minor mistake that stole years of his life. Tears streamed freely as she whispered, "Thank you." Isaac met her gaze with warmth, bowing his head to honor her pain. "To everyone harmed by this corruption," Isaac said, voice softening, "I promise your cases will be reopened." More cries, this time filled with relief instead of grief. "I stand here not just as the FBI director," he added, "but as a man who knows what it feels like to be judged by skin first and truth never." Not a soul blinked. The truth was too sharp, too real. "But we are not defined by their hate," Isaac continued. "We rise, despite it, we rise above it." And today justice rose with us. The applause that erupted this time wasn't just loud, it was healing, like chains breaking, like history correcting itself. Isaac stepped away. From the bench, the gavel no longer belonged to prejudice. It belonged to justice, reclaimed at last. And this was only the beginning.